Welcome to Real Chat,
the podcast where we, Annie and Chad, discuss real shit
loosely related to the real estate industry.
Annie.
Hi, Chad.
How's it going?
Good.
Do you know what episode this is?
20.
Oh my God, you're right.
Woo woo.
I'm impressed. You pulled that out fast. Episode 20 of Real Chat. What is with this cord today? It's like strangling me. I'm having problems.
Strangling would be around your neck, just for the record, not your back.
My neck just caught. I know what my problem is. Need some.
Would you like me to
trail
tell you
mix.
what your problem is?
How's it going this week?
Number one.
Go ahead. Tell me what my problem is.
I have no idea.
You don't?
Mm-mm.
I think you have a pretty good idea.
Are you really going to eat on this podcast? That's going to be so distracting.
I might. Why is it going to be distracting?
Because you're crunching.
Have you had this yet? Peanut butter chocolate trail mix by Planters?
No. Probably has sugar in it. I probably should not eat that.
It has M&Ms in it.
I love M&Ms.
And they're honey roasted.
Oh, what I
peanuts.
have is one of our clients today brought me freeze-dried pickles.
They did.
I forgot I should have brought them.
Drying was a thing.
Yeah.
Why is that a
Why?
thing?
Why?
Like, what does
Because
do?
it
What's
makes
the benefits of it?
Well, it takes the moisture out of the food, which then preserves it for a long, long time.
Mm.
And then you just rehydrate it. Have you never had any kind of?
Well, I've had dehydrated
Oh.
things, but is that different from freeze
It is.
dried?
How is that different? I don't know.
I don't either, but I know when I ate one of the pickles, the flavor of it was delicious.
I haven't had one yet.
It's very spongy.
Well, yeah, because they took all the moisture out. Have you
No, but-
never had freeze-dried strawberries? I'm guessing it's the same texture.
No. I don't know. I just expected it to be crunchy, and it wasn't crunchy. It was
Oh.
spongy.
No, that would be like,
And then that was, you know how I am with my tism.
yeah, you're a little weird.
Can't do the textures.
I
so
forgot about them, though.
it
I'll have to
was
go
like-
try them.
Crunchy. It looked like it was going to be crunchy, and then it was spongy, and then I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I looked at getting one of those freeze-dried machine in my prepping for the end of the world era, which I have moved past.
Have you?
And they're really expensive.
Mhm.
And they look really complicated, but you could freeze dry anything, really. It's a big.
Are they big machines?
Oh,
or-
yeah. I mean, it's probably the size of, nobody else can see that, but that cart you have there.
Which is like maybe 24 by 36.
Maybe a little bit bigger than that. But yeah, you put trays in
That's
there.
like the size of a chest freezer.
And it, yeah.
Well, I guess you are freezing things, huh? Freeze dry.
hmm
So it just makes it really cold and sucks the moisture
It
out.
does. And so people are doing it with candy, and it's big business.
Why?
I don't know.
What-
so
what- I
so
mean,
you
like,
take a Skittle.
I don't understand what the point of doing it is.
It changes the texture. I get. Well, again, the point of why people do it is to preserve food, and it lasts a lot longer.
Well,
Why somebody would freeze dry Skittles is just a gimmicky.
but does it
taste
I guess
thing, I
it
think.
doesn't have to be cold. I always think
Mm-mm.
like freeze dried things have to be cold.
So there's these people on TikTok
My dog
that freeze dry everything, and then people actually send in, try this, and then people are making a lot of money freeze drying, but it's more candy.
Well, my dog treats are freeze dried, which I didn't even realize until just now, even though we've been talking about freeze dried shit all day long, which
For 5
I
minutes,
don't
but
know.
we can call that the day.
Well, I mean, but we were
We've never
talking
talked about this in our whole entire
we were
life.
talking about it this morning when you
Oh.
got the freeze dried pickles, and then
Right.
so it's like an ongoing conversation all
Got
day
it.
long.
Got it.
But my dog, but that's cow.
They're probably
freeze dried
good.
cow. It's beef.
Yeah.
The beef treats,
Right.
and then it's freeze dried.
But
it's
I
like
but I know a
real animal or
but I know
whatever.
a dehydrator. Now someone's going to have to fill it. Now we're going to have to learn this for next time. I don't know what
know.
the difference is, but there is a difference because a dehydrator and a freeze dryer are two different
Right, I think one uses
appliances
because I got this new air fryer. That's a Ninja air fryer. and
that
it-
freeze dries.
No, it doesn't freeze dry. No, it dehydrates. Though.
Okay. Yeah.
And so like,
But
can
you
put
do
it
that
on a
again to-
dehydrator, which I know like grapes. You put grapes in there and dehydrate them, and then that's what raisins are. Dehydrated grapes.
Oh yeah, and they'd be totally different if they were freeze dried. Because
Right.
they'd be more like those
They're like
pickles were.
Right, like great dehydrated. Dehydrating takes it literally dehydrates. It takes the moisture out, and so then when you said freeze drying,
Also takes the moisture
it's
out.
just a different method of taking the moisture out. I guess. I wonder what the benefits
I
are.
don't know, but
How many of our clients do you think have freeze dryers?
one, Marcy. Hi, Marcy.
I know. If you need some freeze dried shit, look up Marcy Huddleston. Her daughter and her have a real business going on there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, fun.
So what's going on this week, Chad? Besides you had no time for lunch
I
today.
had no time for lunch today because I don't know. It's the week of closings, which is weird because it's the first of the month, and that's usually the last of the month.
Yeah, this is the week that spawned from Chad yelling at Annie for having
Just
too
the
many
culmination.
clients.
The culmination of you like flooring it.
Oh.
It is. It's ridiculous. I mean, we have 5 closings this week between the two of us, which I don't even know why I'm saying that's a lot going on because we really don't do anything for closing. Once closing comes around, we're done. My peanuts are really driving you crazy, aren't they?
I cannot believe you're eating, but yeah, I'm just trying to process the fact that you're crunching in my ear.
Do you want to process it out loud?
Give me that back because I want you to
could be
hear what it
fun.
hears like.
No, you can't have these. You're on sugar.
I'm not going to eat them.
Do you want me to go get a plate to put them on? Would that help? Is it the in and out of the bag that's
Yes,
bothering you
it
or
is.
the actual eating?
That's so speaking of that, it reminds me of
What?
at my house.
Yeah.
So my husband sleeps like a log.
Uh-huh.
And the smoke alarms can go off, which are deafening, and he doesn't wake up.
I was wondering where that saying comes from, but go ahead.
But if I open a bag of Doritos while I'm
It's a damn
watching a movie
problem.
and he's sleeping, it startles him.
Where do you think the saying "he sleeps like a log" comes from? Logs don't sleep. Where does that come from?
Is it even a saying? Did I mess up the saying?
No, it's a saying. He sleeps like a log. No, he doesn't. He sleeps like a rock.
Yeah.
Is it sleeps like a log or sleeps like a rock?
I don't know.
Either one.
Neither one of them sleep.
Neither of them makes sense. Sleeps like a baby, sleeps like a rock, and sleeps like a log are all 3 sayings.
Just means you sleep hard and you don't
You
move.
sleep very soundly. Where did it come from?
I don't even have a guess.
Let's add the word origin to our Google search and see if it comes up. Likely stems from the image of a heavy, immobile log comparing a deeply sleeping person to something that is just difficult to move.
Mm.
I'm not sure I believe that,
So
but that's what AI
those are
says.
fun to do, though, to look up the origin of sayings.
I know. Anyways,
Ask me another one.
I'll stop. The origin of a saying? When you say no comments from the peanut gallery, where's that come from? I can only give you ones that I actually already know the answer to, just so you know. So I'm going to tell you whether you're
I'm
right
going
or
to
not.
guess that comes from like an old court. Like in the peanut gallery would be the people sitting up at the top and the judge didn't want the people up there yelling down. So no comments from the peanut gallery?
Nope.
No?
Close, though.
Is that a good guess?
Yeah, that's a good guess. It does come from the separation of an audience at a circus or at the theater. It's commonly they had the seats and then they had the gallery, which was typically lower than the seats. And so you would be looking up and they would serve peanuts at the show. And the people that had money to buy the seats would shell the peanuts, and the peanut shells would all end up on top of the people in the peanut gallery. And the saying, no comments from the peanut gallery, was designed because the people that were in the seats wanted them to shut up. They didn't care because they were down there with the poor people, the lower socioeconomic people at the show. You should be lucky that you get to see the show and ignore the fact that I'm throwing my peanuts on you and keep your comments to yourself.
Got it.
Interesting. It's a theater thing.
You did like the theater.
I know I did.
What else is going on?
I don't know.
You're a little sniffly over there. Are you
I
under the
know,
weather?
a little bit, yeah. I've been having the last like 24 hours. It's been like it's there, you know. You know what I'm talking about? Like here it comes
Take some vitamin C.
every day.
Clear that up.
Yeah, Advil cold and sinus works better. That's the one with Sudafed in
Only if you get it on the other side of the river.
it in St. Louis County.
Yeah, they don't give you that in St. Charles County.
Well, you can get it. You just got a doctor's
Oh.
prescription or whatever behind the pharmacy counter.
So tell me something interesting with one of these last deals we closed this week. Something we can talk about. Anything happen? Fun? Anything you learn? Any ahas?
Mm-mm, not really. They were relatively boring, actually. I guess the one that wasn't last week, it was a couple weeks ago, but we had the whole special agreements argument, or I had to with one of the
Yeah.
agents.
Didn't you have an occupancy thing this week? No?
I mean, we had an occupancy inspection this week. Yes, I was pleasantly surprised by the city of Rock Hill because they re-inspected the house in 24 hours, which I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting. Yeah, that was supposed to close next week, actually, and they wanted to move it up to this week, so we agreed to move it up to this week, and we had the occupancy inspection, and
Yeah.
occupancy inspectors
It's
have to
so,
find something, otherwise, why do
yeah.
they do it? So then, of course, he found something in this house that really didn't have anything wrong with it. It was all silly stuff, but they found it, and then we had to fix it. And I was a little bit worried that we wouldn't get the inspector back out there before close. The repairs wouldn't have been done before close,
Is that
but then I was surprised.
do we already do this topic?
What
Because it came up
topic?
yesterday on a listing appointment that a lot of people don't understand the difference between an occupancy inspection and when a buyer has a building inspection. Did we already do that?
We did.
Because yesterday it came up with a
It does
railing
come up.
loose, and the seller said, "Oh, that's not going to pass inspection."
Right. It
But they
did.
don't live where there's an occupancy
Yeah, it does
inspection.
come up a lot. Um, it will get flagged on a buyer's inspection, but that's not.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly if the inspector catches it.
Right.
Yeah, we have had that conversation, but it is a good point. People don't get it. So I don't think people get a whole lot in the process, like just from step
Well, you
one
don't
to
do it
step
often enough.
two. Yeah, what
As
the
a regular
process
person, I mean,
is like,
yeah.
which is interesting to think. We could talk about that.
Sure.
What is the process?
Between step 1 and step 2?
Yeah, like
What is I
what are
don't
the steps? I don't think people understand what the steps to buying a house is. Like, what is the process of buying or selling, either way? Or what does the process of a home sale look like? Is it, you know what I mean?
not really. Not really sure where you're going.
I'm falling apart over
I don't know if we're
here.
still talking about occupancy inspections or
Sure. I was talking about the whole 9 yards. Like, when you sell a house, step one, what's the first thing that happens after you get a contract?
we're back to a quiz.
That's
Am I the buyer or the seller?
Either way, doesn't really make any difference. The first thing that happens in a transaction is the earnest money gets paid. Like that's step one.
We could just stop at step 1. Let's talk about earnest money.
Okay.
Where can it come from?
Anywhere.
Can it come from your mattress?
Depends on whether you have a loan or not.
Have a loan.
Then probably not.
And why is that?
Because lenders have guidelines for income and debt to income and source of money, and Dodd-Frank is the reason why, if you want like the law.
Sure. Sure, bore us.
They passed Dodd-Frank, which is financial regulation law, after 2008 when the market crashed, largely due to the fact that lenders were writing loans for people that had no capability to pay them back at all. And they were getting rich off of that because they were selling the loans and, whatever. Um, and the government was backing the loans. And then they passed Dodd-Frank, which is just a bunch of regulations that say what qualifications you have to have in order to obtain a conventional 30-year loan. I guess, and it says what qualifications the lender or the borrower has to meet in order for the lender to be insured on the loan. which lenders want. So they follow the regulations.
So the question still, though, is why can't it just be cash? So I've been saving up my cash. I've been saving up my tips. I've been saving my gambling money. I
Right.
keep it in my safe.
Because it has to be sourced.
Right.
Because of Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank says in order for the lender to get insurance on the loan that they write you, they have to be able to tell Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, the insurer, where that money came from. Did you get it from working? And there are qualifications where it can come from.
Right.
Has to come from a job, or a family member.
Or it has to just be, and I believe the word is seasoned. And that,
seasoned, yeah. It can be seasoned. So, or you've had to have had possession of the money for,
is it 30 days?
60 or 90 days.
Right. But that sneaks up on people. All of a sudden they're going to pay their earnest money and they're like, oh, it's in my safe.
It's true. It does sneak up on people.
Or because they don't know that.
Oh, the other thing that gets people all the time is now we have trust funds, but
and why would you name that trust funds?
When I answer that question,
that's what every client asks. Why is it named trust funds?
Because you're placing your earnest money in trust at the escrow agent. So that's why it's named trust funds, because they're literally funds held in trust.
Yeah. So it just confuses people.
Yeah. I don't know why.
So I'm wiring you?
Why does that confuse
I don't
people?
know. Just the word, because usually when somebody says it's in a trust fund, they just think of that in a different way. Then that's the way they're sending the money. I don't know.
It
just
surprises me that it confuses people. Nobody's ever said that to me. But I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It is not different than having money in a trust.
Right.
The same thing.
Right.
It's your money. You own it, but somebody else is in control of it for the time being until the conditions are met. So that's earnest money. But, you have an escrow agent and they hold it in trust. And that money is held there until you fulfill your obligations of the contract and close. Or the contract doesn't close and 12 months passes.
And then who decides?
A judge.
We've had that once, right? Did we ever get that far? Did they ever go that far?
Yeah.
Or did they settle it?
No.
Yeah.
They ended up settling it, but it was after the 12 months and the money was at the state. So, when you pay earnest money and the transaction goes to the escrow agent, well, there's laws in Missouri anyways. It's Missouri specific. I don't know what the rest of the laws are in the country, but in Missouri, it gets placed in an escrow account or a trust account that's owned by the escrow agent, which in our case is typically a title company, although real estate brokers can also hold earnest money in trust. We just don't usually. So typically the title company puts it in their trust account and they mark it as yours, and then they hold it until you close the transaction. And the earnest money gets applied as like a deposit to your transaction. So it comes off of your total cash to close for the buyer. But in the event that there's a dispute about the earnest money, and that arises when one of the buyer or the seller doesn't think the other party did their part under the contract, you can cancel a contract and a contingency or whatever, and then there's a document signed that's called a mutual release.
Or they're just being a jerk,
They
which was ours.
They could just be being a jerk.
Because they clearly didn't perform.
Right.
There was no doubt, but you could tie it up for a year.
Yeah, so in the absence of a mutual release, the title company will not send that money back out of trust. That's the law. They have to hold it unless there's an agreement signed as to what happens with the money, and then they have to hold that for 12 months. And I think the idea there is to give the parties a cool down period to come to some sort
and
of
hopefully
agreement.
Somebody will.
Right, and save the taxpayer some money, because after 12 months, it gets sent to the Secretary of State. I always say that. Secretary of State doesn't have anything to do with money. Gets sent to the state treasurer's office, and then either party to the contract can sue for the earnest money. So in our situation, we had the seller and we had a buyer, and they had a contract, and seller went to closing on closing day and closed, and it was 3:00. I think I might have told this story on the podcast already too.
Right.
And the buyer just decided they didn't want the house anymore and didn't come close. So, and then
we basically said,
yeah,
sue me,
basically.
and then said, I'm not signing your mutual release
Yeah,
either.
I'm not signing your release. Now, they didn't sign the release not because they were going to give the earnest money to the seller, but the seller was pissed. So the
Yeah.
seller wanted more than the earnest money.
Oh,
So
that's
they were
right.
asking for, the 3 months
That's
that they were off
right.
the market. They made a house payment and,
Right.
blah, 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 blah,
Yeah, yeah.
blah. And so they said, sue me. And so then we step out of it at that point, really. Not,
Right. Here's your options.
call a
Seek an
lawyer.
attorney.
But
Yep.
they did not call a lawyer, but
But it is rare.
they did wait for 12 months. And then, like, 3 weeks after the 12-month mark, their agent, the buyer's agent that no-showed, called me and said, my buyer just called me and wants to know if your seller will sign a release now. And so I called the seller and said, you want to sign the release? And he said, yeah. So they signed the mutual release, giving the earnest money to the seller, but the money was already at the state treasurer. So they still had to open the small claims court and sue for it. They just got a summary judgment because they had the
No opposition.
no opposition and the release signed at that point. So the state gave the seller the earnest money.
Wonder how often that happens.
I know.
At the state, they're like, here's another one.
There's another one, right?
Y'all had to wait a year, but here you go.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm getting older. I'm getting softer, but I would be that person. Sometimes you got to stand for principle. What's the principle of it?
Yeah.
Do they call that? Oh, look that one up. Biting off your nose to spite your face.
It's true. Where did that thing come from? Let's do it.
Because I say that one a lot, but I don't know the origin of it.
It's cut your nose off to spite your face.
Oh, I guess you can't bite your own nose off. Cut your nose off to spite your face. And it came from?
In the Middle Ages, it was not unusual to cut off someone's nose for revenge as punishment.
Well, that was boring.
I know.
That's not how we use it today. It's doing it
You
to
might.
yourself.
Yeah. If you refuse a good opportunity because someone you dislike would benefit from it, that's cutting your nose off to spite your face.
It's not how I use it.
Yeah, cutting off one's nose to spite. Because I think that...
It's like mad at something in your own life and doing damage to it because you're still going to be
something that
on the bad end.
It's supposed to be something that you would benefit from if you did it, but you're not doing it because of something else that is really not relevant.
Oh, yeah, because they actually usually say it in don't cut your nose off to spite your face.
Right. And I think that a lot of people hear it as don't cut your nose off despite, like DESPITE, despite your face.
What the heck is despite?
It's a word like despise. Like, isn't that a word?
I don't think so. It's to spite.
I know that's what the saying is, but
Despite. I don't think that.
despite is a word. And despite means without being affected by or in spite of. So it could be despite, actually.
Oh, maybe it is.
So don't cut your nose off despite your face.
Mm.
No, that would be in spite of your face. It can't be that. It has to be to spite your face.
And the sad part is we waste a lot of time in our life figuring these things out.
I know, but that's all right. It's our joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's supposed to be don't cut your nose off to spite your face. That means, you're doing something stupid to your own detriment. For
Right.
No good
That's
reason.
how that's how I
Right.
use it.
Right. Like
Yeah.
trying to spite your face, and your solution is cut your nose
I'll
off.
teach you.
Yeah, that doesn't work. It's not good punishment for your face.
Right.
Anyways.
Hmm.
That's that. Marathon, Florida. Where's that at?
Never heard of it.
Me either. But somebody from Marathon, Florida just called me. I don't think it's a real place.
I bet it is. What step are we on? Earnest money.
Oh, yeah. In the transaction?
That was a squirrel.
That was a squirrel. Earnest money is first. And then comes buyer's inspections, which are not to be confused with
Occupancy inspections, which is how we got to this topic, right?
Yes. And then comes insurability. And really all of that happens at one time. So the buyer's contingencies, because sellers don't have any contingencies in a contract typically, are, all gone through at that point. Buyer's inspections, buyer's insurability, you got loan contingency, appraisal contingency, title survey contingency. All of those contingencies
No,
get
and it's
started
just,
after that.
yeah, it's just making sure. That's the whole reason we started that conversation was it's not something that you do all the time unless you're obviously in real estate. So some of those
No,
things don't
there's
make
two.
sense,
Yeah, they don't make sense. So the biggest thing to remember, I think, is when it comes to a sales contract, and I don't think people think this, they think there's a lot more people involved than there is. But in a sale transaction or a real estate transaction, there's only two people involved, the seller and the
the buyer,
buyer.
right?
And so you get like, you do all of these things, you bring in all of these inspectors and surveyors, but they're only involved in a transaction at the request of the buyer or the seller. So you don't have even
Right.
occupancy
Right.
inspections
Right.
are
I know where you're
involved in a transaction at the request of the buyer. The buyer requests that the seller gets the inspection done and notifies them if there's something that comes up that they're not willing to correct. But that doesn't
right.
mean that it's so like even occupancy inspections, they're not pass fail
Nope.
either.
Right.
Like
And that's a big
I guess they are pass fail, but they don't necessarily kill the transaction.
right.
Like so
They could,
and
but
likely
it's going to be
will,
the buy. But it's going to be that's the part. And I know we've done this. So we're just getting so
I
old that
said
we're
a minute.
repeating them.
Well,
But
that's okay. They're good
it's the
lessons to
buyers.
remind people
They're
of.
all the buyers contingency.
Right.
The seller just has to say in an occupancy one, if they don't get it, it doesn't say because you'll hear real estate agents say, oh, well, don't worry, this is in St. Louis County, so you'll have a past occupancy. No, that's not what the contract says.
Not necessarily
The contract
true.
says
Right.
what the seller's going to do. And if they cannot get that, they're going to let you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to decide.
And then
But
you
all
get a
of those,
resolution period, and the buyer gets to make a choice.
right? It's
what they
always
wanna
the
do.
buyer's choice, though.
Right. No, we had that when I didn't think when I on that one that we just did, when I thought it would take us a little while to get the actual inspection back. I went back through and I said, this is what's on the inspection notice. All of these things will be fixed by close. And actually the contract's a little bit ambiguous there because it wasn't clear to me in the contract whether we had to actually provide a past report or not by close.
What do you mean by past? Oh, you mean
So
past
we had
PASSED or PAST?
So we had the occupancy inspection. We got the list of stuff that needed to be done. The contract says that the seller will either provide notice to the buyer of things that they're not willing to correct or correct the things prior to close. Doesn't actually say you have to have a reinspection done prior to close.
Mm. Somebody better shore that up.
It was interesting to
Yeah.
me. Like, no,
That's a
obviously,
problem. I mean,
I called just to see, because we were going to schedule the reinspection or whatever. But yeah. And I couldn't want to read it again because I want to
No, I
come
wanna
back to
read
it
it.
after I'm not in the middle of it. But I was like, I think this contract's really open to do an occupancy inspection, fix the things, and then like some municipalities charge for a reinspection.
well, and I guess it's going to be up to the whichever side you have on that. But that's the buyer understanding what that means.
No, and I don't think, but in that situation, if that's, and again, I'm going to go back and read it again in full. This particular, I didn't necessarily need to find
'Cause
the
we got-
actual
'cause it was
answer
passed.
because we ended up getting it passed before close, which is what we usually do. But I was like, you know how when you cut it down to the line, that's my job. I got to make sure I'm protecting my client. So what is
Right.
it exactly that we have to do? And so my brain started working those contingencies in the middle
Sure,
of
'cause it was
dealing with
us.
it. Right. So I was like, I'm not sure we'll have to do that. I need to read that again if this doesn't work out. And then it worked out. So I never went
Right.
back to
Okay.
it. But yeah, it was an interesting thought. Like the wording in that you have to, as a seller in the St. Louis contract that we use, you have to do the inspection and provide notice to the buyer of anything that you're not willing to correct prior to close.
Right. So as the seller, if you don't do that, what happens? You let that day come and go and you totally forgot and you didn't get it.
You have to, you agree to fix anything that
Right.
comes up on the
You've
inspection.
lost your ability to not.
negotiate
Right.
it. Right. So But I don't know whether, yeah, it was an interesting talk.
But that's one of those that I'm always very careful to make sure that our sellers know when you go under contract, you're selling your house unless we can't negotiate something with
Right,
the buyer and the buyer wants to walk away.
right,
Because we've had that happen a couple times where sellers are contingent on the sale of their house and
right.
something falls through and they're like, well, you
Well,
know what? I'm just not going to sell it. I think I'll just keep it.
yeah, and I do even with that one, which is a little bit backwards, the seller still has no out. If the buyer's fine with taking the house without the items fixed, you're selling them the
Well, no,
house.
sure, for sure.
So, like,
Right.
I hear a lot of
That's
agents,
true. It's still
listing
the buyer's
agents tell
decision.
100% it is. Seller can never cancel a contract.
Right.
They never have that authority or that option or
But so
that
it's
choice.
really, you have to make sure you tell them that
Yeah, sellers need to know when you sign the contract.
you're selling your house.
If the buyer does everything they say they're going to do, you're closing. Like,
That's right.
you don't have an
They're going to
option.
give you this amount of money on this date, and this is how it's going to work.
Right.
And then you tell the buyer, it's the total opposite. We're telling the seller, we might want to buy your house.
Right.
But before we decide that for sure, we get to do all these things.
Right. No, that's very true. And we have talked about this a lot, but it's always good to come back to
It
it
is.
because I don't think people
Because
get
the
it.
average person doesn't do it enough to really understand that.
But that's also why they need to hire a realtor.
It's true. Everybody needs a realtor.
Everybody needs a realtor. Everybody
It's
needs
true.
a realtor. So, anyways, that was fast. I didn't even feel like we talked about anything, but it's almost over.
Well,
Any final thoughts you got?
nope. I'm just glad you're done snacking.
I was just thinking about picking back up my planters because I'm hungry.
Bless you.
Oh dear Lord! I hope this goes away
I
tonight.
think
and doesn't
spring.
get
I think
worse.
it's just spring is coming.
It very well could be. I have really bad allergies, you know that, and the up and down always gets me. And so, I mean, we've had the up and down. It was 70 on Sunday, and then
Well, I
it was
think as a
30 this morning, which is Thursday. Like, and now it's 50 already. I'm like 20-degree swings.
maybe
in
you
one
should get
day.
ahead of this year and go see your allergist now.
Yeah,
Eh.
it's just a little snot. A couple
Hey,
sneezes.
last thing is, wish we could take the camera and zoom around, but our phone booth came in today.
Oh yeah, they did. I haven't even really got to play with them yet. I can't wait till I get to use
Yeah,
it the first time.
so at our new space, we have 2 phone booths that agents can go in to have private conversations, not be overheard, or if you want to go from Clark Kent to Superman.
And this section, ladies and gentlemen, was sponsored by Realty One Group Trifecta because that was a commercial. But that's all right. We do. I am very excited about the phone booth. So
I was so excited.
I think the agents are too. So that's exciting. So cool. Episode 20. It's almost spring and summer, and I'm super excited about that. And I think the busy season is
It's
off
here.
to a
It's
start.
coming.
It's going. It's
Yeah.
rolling. I know they've been popping up left and right. So
We've got a couple good listings coming. So that's
everybody
exciting.
does.
Yeah.
I know. So super
Buyers out
excited.
there, it's time.
It is time.
Get your pre-approval.
Pre-approval. For sure. If you're planning on buying this year, it's time. It's time. It's time. So the weather's about to break and the listings are come flooding.
That's right.
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. Well, have a great week.
I just heard a dog.
I don't think so. I think you heard a sneeze.
Oh.
But
All right.
see you next week.
Bye.
Subscribe if you haven't. Bye.